Alright, so I refreshed my memory on the Black Panther and, all the stuff I study sometimes slips my mind. The word I was looking for was Bastet. And I've seen white people, satanic white people, some documentaries I've seen recently, refer to their goddess as Bast. There is no mistaking the fact that the panther in this is connecting the Yakuza and all mafia organizations to the occult. There is no question about it. Eastern philosophy is connected to the occult. History, obviously. So let me read you from some witchcraft, pagan sites, their explanations. I'm going to read you the Egyptian explanation. And I'm sure when I'm done with all this, it really won't matter exactly how they mean it. You'll get the general idea, which is really all that matters. Black Panther is a symbol of regaining power, aggressiveness, protector, feminine, death and rebirth, knowledge on dark, lunar control, astral movement. So what usually happens here is these occultists kind of make it up as they go along. They take what is known from Egypt and then they fill in the blanks themselves. And you have different schools that fill in the blanks in different ways. That's the problem with Masonry, is it's created all these different cult groups who develop their own dogma, and the Satanists, whether they've always ran the show or not, but at some point, I guess it doesn't really matter. At some point, they've taken over Masonry and the secret society networks, and they understand them, and they know how to get them to work with them, and that's what we have now, a new world order of a collaboration of all these cocksuckers. Okay, another article I read from Prophetic Dreamers says the Black Panther represents a high degree of witchcraft or occult. So it's actually, in the occult world, a symbol of being a high-ranking, witch or occultist. And, a lot of these people, not all these people are rich. Some of these people are very poor. Satanists typically, especially how most of us understand it, is, are poor trailer trash people, backwoods people, druggies. They're not exactly fucking always educated, but sometimes they are. It's very interesting how this all works out. So then you have Bastet. What usually happens when somebody becomes interested in reading, reading is a very important skill. Reading comprehension. Very critical when it comes to learning. Very critical. So when you have people who are interested in reading anything, they find an interest in history or the occult, and they start reading a lot. They read magazines and comic books. They tend to increase their IQ, and so they do better at school. So it kind of helps them. It's the same thing with the Jews. A lot of the Jews, they've read a lot of things. They learn Hebrew. They learn another language, and part of your prerequisite to get an AA degree, for example, is you have to have a language, right? So you see a lot of these people, they have what it takes to excel to a certain degree, and some of the first people who started studying for the SAT and so on and so forth were Jews. I mean, it's not that they're smarter than everyone else, it's that their culture allows for them to do better than a lot of other groups of people, because of, a lot of our culture is based on white and Jewish culture. Well, I'm not going to get into that, a lot of our education system. So Bastet, the Black Panther goddess and protector of deceased royalty. So obviously, in a group of Egyptians or something along these lines came around and said, we're going to call it Bastet, and, they'll be the protector. But you also see there's likeness in Bastet and Sekhmet. But anyway, Bastet first appears in the 3rd millennium BC, where she is depicted as either a fierce lioness or a woman with the head of a lioness. So you can see the similarities between Rastafari and the Black Panther movement, and you'll see a lot of these Black Panthers we have nowadays have dreadlocks. And not all of them know why that is, but those who've been in prison for a while, read up on this, those in secret societies, read up on this, they know why. Images of Bast were often created from a local stone named alabaster. Anyway, the lioness was the fiercest hunter among the animals in Africa, hunting in cooperative groups of related females. Originally, she was viewed as the protector goddess of Lower Egypt, which is actually the top part. As protector, she was seen as defender of the pharaoh, and consequently of the later chief male deity Ra, who was also a solar deity, gaining her the title Lady of Flame and Eye of Ra. Her role in the Egyptian pantheon became diminished as Sekhmet, a similar lioness war deity, became more dominant in the unified culture of Lower and Upper Egypt, known as the Two Lands. So what you see in the gangs, for example, the Crips and the Bloods, is the Bloods, according to them, and according to the OGs like T. Rogers, they said that they came out because they were doing it in response to the violence which was done by the Crips, which you can see as a sort of a, the Crips kind of, some of them were former Black Panthers and things of this nature, but they were going off the deep end. So you have this kind of flamed out group, bloodlines, flames, the Lady of Flame, coming out, and they're saying, well, we're gonna put these guys in check. And you see, it seems to be more popular among the Bloods, to do what Lil Wayne does, and what's this guy's name? It's this Waka Flocka Flame, I believe. It's been a while since I heard any of this stuff, but I believe he has the long hairs too, and he's a Blood. So anyway, and then the Crips, they like braids, and all this stuff goes back to Egypt, really. And all this gang stuff, the different colors they use, and so on. So where are we? Her role in the Egyptian pantheon became diminished as Sekhmet, a similar lioness war deity, became more dominant in the unified culture of Lower and Upper Egypt, known as the Two Lands. In the first millennium BC, when domesticated cats were popularly kept as pets, Bastet became to be represented as a woman with a head of a cat in the second. So you see all this stuff, it goes back to Black Egypt, and you see the witches are associated with cats, and all this stuff, it connects together, and it's Hollywood loves it, and the entertainment industry and the music industry and Lady Gaga, all these scumbags, and Nicki Minaj and all these these complete slime balls, they love this stuff, even Britney Spears and Taylor Swift and all these airhead ditzy fucking white female snow bunnies in the industry, and the Playboy bunnies, and it all goes back, Harkett, and it all goes back to Egypt. Ultimately, the occult goes back to Egypt. Babylon does not predate Egypt, neither does Sumeria. Before Sumer, there was Egypt. Before any people were in the Middle East, there was people in Africa. One could even say that the Bible is a racist tale of history, because it makes it seem like life did not originate in Africa. Anyway, where was I? After the 11th century BC, so domestic cats appeared as Bastet's sacred animal. After the 11th century BC, Bast was commonly depicted as a woman with the head of a cat or lioness, often carrying a sistrum, sacred rattle, and an aegis. When the Greeks started to settle Egypt, and around the 5th century BCE, Bastet started to gain some of the characteristics of Artemis, such as transforming from a sun goddess to a moon goddess. If you truly understand this occult stuff, it all goes back to Egypt. It's all despicable. I think the major problem with it is you have I'm going to answer this phone. The major problem is that you have a white interpretation of it, which is very demonic. The white man's twist. Look at my Illuminati